Hello, everyone, and welcome back to They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy. And my guest today is someone who I've known for over a decade, been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time at events and in rooms with him, having conversations ranging from growing your law firm, the thing that we'll certainly be talking about here, but also talking about powerlifting and some of the cool programs that he's been working on for mock juries and all sorts of things. We're going to cover quite a few different spaces here because he's just a joy to talk to. And so I've tricked him into another 40-minute conversation with me by having him on this podcast. So Tim Semelroth, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here. We just had our first snow in Iowa, so I'm looking out, and it really does look like a winter wonderland today.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, we've avoided the first snow thus far, and I'm perfectly happy to continue avoiding it for some time longer. All right, Tim. So answer the question. What's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
One of the smartest things that anybody's told me about the practice of law is that great cases make great lawyers. So if you aspire to be great, and not everybody does, but if you aspire to be great, you have to put yourself in a situation where you're going to get great cases. That just means you have to be mindful of that. So maybe that is hooking your wagon to a mentor who has a reputation that is going to attract great cases. Maybe it is making a commitment to marketing so that you're going to get cases. But you can be the best technician in the world. You know, you can be absolutely fantastic at opening statements, but you are never going to be appreciated as great either reputationally or financially if you're not working on great cases.
Okay, so that feels like there's some origin story behind that. There's a great case for you, or the seeking out of the great case. So how did that manifest itself for you coming out of law school?
Well, first off, I was looking for a mentor. And I think part of it is I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And so I never had a situation where I could follow the path of an older brother or an older sister, or even my parents. My dad worked in a factory. My mom was a school teacher. And so I was constantly looking for, mentors in my life, whether it was, in high school, learning, on the wrestling team, who was somebody that I could look up to, whether it was in college and trying to figure out, how to get into law school. And so I approached my post law school career the same way. And so one of the first things I did was I did a judicial clerkship because, and I spent a lot of time getting to know the different judges in the state of Iowa, trying to figure out who would be somebody who I would learn from. And then when I was looking for jobs, I had a number of different opportunities, and ultimately I chose the job where I would have a chance to work side by side with the best trial lawyer that I could. And so that's always been, I guess, a theme in my professional development is finding good mentors and learning as much as I can from them. And then, ultimately when I started serving a role as an owner in my firm, it was reaching out and trying to figure out how to be the best marketer I could be so that I could not just get great cases because they were referred to, the founder of my firm, I was being intentional to make sure that great cases were coming my way.
So that's not something that everyone latches onto, especially when you're talking about the scenario where, you were the oldest of 5, so I was the oldest of 3, and that whole talk that you had of seeking mentors, my mother a teacher, my father, FBI agent, which is sort of a very steady type of job, right? Here we are, entrepreneurs. Like, how does that end up happening? Seeking mentors, all of that, just so many echoes that I love there. But that process of deciding to go down the path of I'm going to learn how to find these cases for myself. A lot of firm owners that I talk to who moved up through the ranks of a firm, or at some point or another, they will either lock in as the technician, like you mentioned. They're like, okay, I'm going to be a trial lawyer. This is what I love to do. I'm not going to be worry about getting the cases because I get fed good cases. And then others seem to go down this path of I want to be a business. I want to be good at business development. What drove you down that business development path?
Well, it was kind of a traumatic experience because I really did spend the first part of my career just focusing on being the best trial lawyer I could be. I love just focusing on the nuances of an opening statement or a cross-examination, and I still get a lot of joy out of doing that. But what happened was the guy who founded our firm, he sat down with my partner and I. We weren't partners at the time. We were working for him, and he said, I'm ready to slow down. And so I think it's time that you guys take financial responsibility for the firm. And yes, and
okay then.
and up until that time, we had never thought about keeping the lights on or whatever. And so we had to go to a bank and get a line of credit, which the firm never had.
Wow.
And we had to. So what happened was he liked to go away in December and January, and so he left after telling us that, hey, we have financial responsibility for the firm.
Oh,
And
interesting.
at that time, we had a corporate structure where you had to empty out the bank accounts at the end of the year. And so lo and behold, it's January, and it's time to pay people. And our office manager says, we don't have enough money to pay everybody. And I had to, I had to, write a check to the firm so that we could cover the first payroll. And it was at that moment I realized I never want to do this again. I need to have a steadier stream of income. I don't want to be feast or famine, which is the life of a lot of trial lawyers. I want a more predictable stream of income. And so that's when I really became focused on where are our cases coming from? What can I do to make sure that we have cases in the pipeline at all times? We can't just rely upon the reputation of the guy who founded our firm.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so trauma-informed stories. It feels like every entrepreneur has some type of jumping off point. Okay, so you have the I'm writing the check to the firm moment. Now it's I need to learn how to generate business. What did that journey look like?
Well, you're a part of it because I started reaching out, on the internet to find out how could I market in a way that felt true to me. And so education-based marketing was something that immediately attracted me. I love to coach. I enjoy talking to a client about their legal issue and teaching them the situation that they're in. And so that's where I met Ben and ultimately you and Dan Kennedy and a number of other people. And so at that point it really pointed me towards the direction of learning all the different ways that I could market our firm and the different ways that we could bring cases in the door.
One thing that I know about the way that you've handled marketing over the years, Tim, is that despite your firm growing significantly, how many attorneys in the firm at this point?
15.
50, wow, 15 attorneys. So despite the firm growing in that way, you still follow the basics and keep the basics implemented at a level that most people, when they get to say a few attorneys, they start dropping parts of their marketing. So, two-part question. One, what are some of the basics that you've kept in place? And two, why are you good at continuing to implement the basics?
Well, so the basics, obviously, tending to your herd, identifying the people who know you as a good lawyer, and making sure that you are always top of mind with them. And so whether that involves, if it's just everybody, then it's, your monthly print newsletter, your e-newsletter on top of
Mm,
that, birthday cards, holiday cards. If they're attorneys, developing a Maven's list, giving, thoughtful gifts multiple times a year to those people. Just, I don't know who first said it, but it just makes all kinds of sense. It's a lot easier to market to people who already know that you're good at your job. And so,
yes.
a lot of the basics are wrapped around that. Now, how do I keep that up? It's because I hired a marketing director. I mean, the
There we
fact
go.
is that that is not something that, I still try cases. I tried a case 2 weeks ago. And so, and when that happens, I am absolutely consumed by the case. Just
Mm.
a little aside. So I'm working with an online fitness coach right now who makes me weigh myself every day. From the
Oh.
beginning of the trial to the end of the trial, I lost 7 pounds, and such that I got a text from him saying, "Are you okay? What's going on? Is that a typo?" And so, so when you do that, when you have those events in your practice, there's no way you can keep up with the basics on your own.
Hmm.
You have to hire somebody who's going to manage those things for you. And so, the answer to your question is the only way that I can continue to keep up with the basics is to hire somebody who you trust, who can make sure that the newsletter goes out every month, who can make sure that we have a good design for the holiday card. Because if it was up to me, those things would fall by the wayside whenever I was involved in a big case.
Yeah, I know the feeling, and obviously we've seen it. I mean, you've seen it in the many groups that you've participated in, et cetera, where people will start putting forth the effort. They may even see something click, and then they go, just for some reason or another, apathy or time management issues. It falls by the wayside because they never take that step to buttress themselves either by a great system. These days, you can use AI to help you out, or obviously by hiring people in house. Now, you're not just someone, and it's funny because as you were talking, Tim, and you meant about the basics, and you mentioned something like a Maven's list. Immediately, that's one of those things where for us, that's one of the basics. For other folks, that may be next level. Oh my gosh, I've never heard of that before. So I'd actually be interested in hearing how you explain the Maven's list to the uninitiated.
Well, so the Maven's list is made up of people who have referred us cases that we've accepted more than once. So
Mm,
they're somebody who is going to have access to a referral of a good personal injury case, workers' comp, PI. What we do a lot of different things because we're here in Iowa, and you can't just you can't have too narrow a niche. There's only 3 million of us in the state of Iowa, but
fair enough.
but uh, you identify those people who are likely to be a consistent source of referrals. And then
Mhm.
rather than just recognizing them with referral checks or thank you notes when they send somebody your way, which we do,
Mhm.
uh, we have 4 times a year, they get a gift. And, maybe it's a book. Maybe it's, usually not more than once a year. Maybe it's a food item.
Mm.
Maybe it's, it's things that they would, take home and put in their, a roadside assistance kit, that they can throw in the trunk of their car. Just various things like that. Not because a case just came in, but because, hey, we appreciate you. We value the trust that you put in us when you send somebody our way, and we just want to let you know that we're thinking of you, and hopefully you continue to think of us.
Well, and of course, you've mentioned the very simple, clever idea that you're not tying this to individual reactions to referrals coming in. We've received referrals. Now you're put into a regular program that, as long as you're on this program, you will receive these gifts at the same time other people are receiving gifts. And I hope every law firm owner or lawyer listening to this hears what that strategy really means, because I know a lot of people have hangups about tying gifting to the referral and the ethics rules, etc. And actually, that kind of brings me to another interesting concept. You're a guy who I've always known you to uphold a very high ethical standard, yet you are also someone who remains on the cutting edge of marketing and technology within the legal field. I think a lot of people have a hard time holding those two concepts in equal weight. So how do you merge those two ideas for yourself and allow them to push you forward rather than hold you back?
Well, I don't know if it's a strength or weakness to say that I like shiny objects, right? And so
it's honest, at least.
Yes, and so I do like the idea that there is a new tool out there that may make me a better lawyer, or may make us a better company, or whatever. And so I'm constantly on the lookout for those things. Whether it is I was abysmal at managing my inbox, and so Charlie, you recommended a company called Inbox Done, where you can hire a virtual assistant who just curates your inbox for you. That's been huge.
Oh, good.
Or another thing that you helped me with, Charlie, is that I was telling you, hey, what do? I used to give all this free information to people on DVD, and nobody has a DVD player anymore.
Right.
How do I communicate this? And you turned me on to the idea of, hey, Tim, there are these online course platforms that you can use to give people that kind of information. And so, it's being open to those tools. Though I'll be honest, I usually have to hear about it 2 or 3 times in different settings. And if I've heard it 2 or 3 times, then it's like, okay, now it's time for me to dive in and figure out how to use this tool. I can teach myself the basics of most things, but ultimately, if it is something that we are going to use at a high level, I will then recruit another person, in the firm to then be the resident expert, because I can't be the resident expert of the Teachable platform, and as well as our case management system, as well as this or that. And so I will typically be the one who dives in and gains a certain level of competence, but then I'm looking to have somebody else in my firm become the expert at it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the technology, hearing it multiple times and everything, and yet you were not one of the guys chasing down like NFTs when people were trying to introduce those. So I'm just curious, like, what is then Tim Semelroth's barometer for, no, I'm not going down that path, thank you very much?
Well, it's sort of like, what is Warren Buffett says, I never invest in anything that I don't understand. And so if I can't wrap my head around it with a certain amount of study, then I'm just like, that may not be for me.
Wait, Tim, are you implying that NFTs were a really confusing way for people to shuffle money around in things that appear to be elaborate Ponzi schemes? My words, not Tim's. You can't accuse him of anything. I'm just saying that here on the show. Tim can nod yes or shake his head no, whatever works for him.
Yeah, when it comes to money, I'm pretty boring. So this is if we're doing a parenting corner, I follow a blogger, the Financial Samurai, and he wrote a book called "Buy This, Not That," and I have 3 kids. 2 of them, one is in college, one is going to be in college next year, and so I said, all right, here's the deal this summer. I like this book. It talks about finances at I think, an important level. It talks about a lot of life decisions, the financial life decisions. We're going to have a
Hmm.
book club, which basically means I'm going to buy them food once a week, and we're going to go through every
Perfect.
chapter of this. And that will make me feel better that I'm sending you out into the world with a basic financial education. So yeah, when it comes to finances, I am not a shiny object guy, but the fundamentals are good enough for me.
Yeah, it's actually kind of an interesting point. I find most people are shiny object in certain categories of life, but oftentimes are pretty boring, yeah, in other areas. I'm similar in that way, right? It's with the finances, I sort of say openly and honestly, I carry one credit card for myself personally, and I have one card for the business. That's it. I'm not messing around with points, at least not yet. At some point, I'll make that like my executive assistant's problem to mess around with points. I don't know. I don't want to deal with any of it. So, in growing the firm, we talked about basics, and I personally think, Tim, that very few people, even those who have watched you within, say, the great legal marketing universe and seen you grow, may not really know the scope of growth that you've achieved because you're a humble individual. So I'd love to look back over the last decade and examine some of those major growth points for you. You mentioned hiring a marketing director was a big point of growth for you. What are some of the other things that allowed you to go from however many it was in the past to 15 lawyers today?
So the two guys who founded my firm were both contemporaries, and they had very much a boutique practice for over 10 years, and they were primarily known as medical malpractice lawyers.
Mm,
And so I was their first attorney hire, and so for the first almost 7, 8 years of my practice,
wow.
I did what they needed me to do. Whether it was writing, research, trying cases, taking depositions, that sort of thing. I didn't focus on business at all. Uh, then one of them became a judge, and then by default I became a partner. And then we realized we had too much work, and so we brought in my partner Presley, and Presley had an expertise in nursing home litigation. And so
Oh,
all of a sudden, that's a new practice area. And so that's when I realized, oh, wait, we can, we don't just have to do medical malpractice and certain bits of pieces of PI that we would do. We
mm,
can be deliberate and add new practice areas. And so then it went to workers' compensation. We found that we could do that at a high level. And then Social Security disability, and then plaintiffs' employment law cases. And so we just kept adding practice areas. And so, we are an injury and disability firm. Uh, that's how we describe ourselves.
hmm.
We work in all corners of the state of Iowa, but the growth has been sort of natural. It's like, okay, this is a good lawyer. They do this. That's something that we don't do. We can support them because we have a great marketing system. We have great staff. We have this infrastructure. And so, and ultimately people come to us. I mean, so,
Mm.
you know, Social Security disability practice was a lawyer came to me and said, it looks like you guys are dipping your toe in this area. Would you like to buy my practice?
Wow.
Employment law, it was a similar situation where an employment law lawyer who'd been practicing for years and years came to us and said, hey, I really think that this fits in your firm. This is fits in your brand. And one of the best things about exposing yourself to people like you, Charlie, is that you very much focus on the mindset of being open to the opportunities that are available,
Mm.
and I need that. I mean, it's like because it's very easy for me to say, hey, this is working just great, but you have to be open to those opportunities when they come. And I think because of the mindset that people like you have taught, when people come to us with these opportunities and they make sense to us, from a business standpoint, we're ready to take them. And so that has led to, now we've always been based in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but
Mm-hmm.
we have an office in Des Moines, Iowa now with 2, soon to be 3 lawyers there. We just signed a lease in Dubuque, Iowa. We already
Awesome.
have the lawyer for that spot. And so, I mean, it seems very natural because we like to think we're at a place where if you like to try cases, if you're committed to being a good trial lawyer, then this is a
Mm.
great home for you because you can just focus on being a good trial lawyer, and the machine, the firm, is going to feed you the great cases that's going to allow you to be great.
I mean, that is super powerful. The fact that you have set up this engine. Now, I am curious, have there been any notable misfires in the process or big lessons learned along the way?
Oh, sure. So as you grow, you need people. And you've heard me say this probably dozens of times, but one thing I've learned about hiring is you should never go to the grocery store when you're hungry.
I quote you
Uh,
all the time about it.
we, I've made my share of bad hires,
Mm.
and I can tell you that I can trace it to 2 things.
Mm.
Number one is I was hungry. We were desperate for help, and here was this person, and you immediately like put upon them. It's like, oh
Mm.
great, they can take over this, this, and this. Okay, that's the biggest mistake that I've made. The second mistake, which is sort of in the same vein, is hiring for experience, not for attitude.
Mm.
And whenever I've hired somebody because it's like, hey, they have this great skill set and they're going to be able to hit the ground running, then you deal
Yeah.
with they have their own way of doing things. What they think is busy is not necessarily what you think is busy. And
You
so,
don't say.
yeah. And so I've realized that you constantly have to be in a growth mentality. You're always hiring in one way, shape, or form. And that's
Hmm.
something I think you actually gave me permission once, Charlie. You said, Tim, you have permission to post an ad and you don't have to fill it if the right candidate doesn't come through the door.
Yep. Yep.
And that's been huge because it allows you the freedom that when somebody is out there who is a great candidate, that maybe you're going to make an opportunity for them because you know that long term they'll be a good contributor to your firm.
Yeah, and you're at that level where talent acquisition is a huge part of the game. Now, at a firm of your size, one of the we've talked marketing, just spoke on talent acquisition. There's the middle part that usually happens in a firm, especially around the $1.5 million mark as they start making their way, like to get to the $5 million mark. One of the things that you have to dial in is you have to dial in systems, especially when you have as many lawyers as you're talking about. So systems wise, what have you built in the firm that allows you this ability to go and grab a law firm or grab a lawyer, install them in the practice, and still run well as a law firm overall?
Well, marketing is the key, right? Because you have to have faith that you will have cases for
Mm.
these people to do, and you have to believe that the marketing fundamentals that you have will work in maybe an area different than what you currently have. So I think that gives you a level of confidence. If you know how to market, if you know how to make the phone ring, then
Mm-hmm.
you can go into different areas. Uh, but the other thing, and is this, I don't know if this is politically correct to say or not, but
I don't care.
thank God for the pandemic. The pandemic forced us
Mm-hmm.
to learn how to be good at practicing remotely.
Yeah.
It forced us to be, to adopt a whole lot of different technologies at once, whether it was moving to a cloud-based case management system, whether it was learning how to use Zoom effectively, whether it was developing a meeting schedule that is different than walking down the hall and talking to somebody. I
Yep.
mean, and so in a lot of ways, the pandemic uh, primed the pump for growth for us, because once we realized we could do those things, then it's like, okay, well, then we can think beyond just, the Cedar Rapids, Iowa metro area. We can have different offices, that are hours away from us, and feel like that they're still part of our culture. The other benefit of that is that it makes you more flexible in terms of what people want in their jobs. So if people want to work remotely, if people want to work part-time, if you've invested in that infrastructure where they can answer the firm phone on their cell phone, that they can participate, you can know what they're doing because the case management system works no matter where they are. You can see what they're doing. All of those things. I'll tell you, I have 3 direct reports, and 2 of my 3 do not work in the office.
Wow.
They work remotely, and they are people who, one of them for sure, my paralegal. So one of the things I'm most proud of is that before the pandemic, I was running myself. I had 3 paralegals and had over 120 cases that I was managing myself with, and I could get attorney support.
Yeah.
I am now down to 20 cases and 1 paralegal, because
Yeah, you
I
are.
decided that the cases that I really enjoyed working on at this stage of my career are truck crash cases. And I had been spending more and more of my time doing it. And so I finally took the plunge and said, okay, that's all it's not all, it's about 90% of what I do are truck wreck cases. And, but my paralegal, who I had trained to be my right hand in these truck wreck cases, came to me about a year and a half ago and said, my husband just got a great job in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I was able to say, because we had worked remotely together during the pandemic, well, do you still want to work here? Yes. Okay. Well, let's figure out a way that you can do it from Atlanta. And so I mean, that investing in that infrastructure really does help you in the talent acquisition stage or the talent retention stage, because now you can be the kind of job that people want.
So, because I know that there are a lot of firm owners who I've talked with recently who are starting to get into more of a distributed workforce model, especially as they move from, say, a dozen people and heading towards, say, 20, 25 people in the firm, and they're just recognizing space limitations and trying to think creatively. What tips would you give to people who are looking at building a distributed workforce?
What I have learned the hard way is that remote workers are great for back end things. We have had great success with remote paralegals. We've had great success with remote marketing staff members. We've had great success with people. We have people who just order medical records, and you can outsource that. It's the front of the house stuff, the answering your phone, the intake, that I haven't cracked the code on that. I've tried, but I have not been successful finding the right remote people. And I've tried multiple times to do those jobs. And so, I think you could probably take somebody like, we've found, we've developed an intake system that involves a middle step where that person is doing a lot of work from home, but she worked for us for like 5 years in the office. And so we know her, we knew her strengths, we knew,
Right.
and so then we were, she's able to do a lot of that from home. But in general, if you think of all of the tasks that need to be done in your firm that do not involve interfacing with the public, you can probably come up with a pretty good remote solution. It's much more challenging if they're going to be interacting with the public on a day-to-day basis.
Gotcha. Good advice. Now, I want to make sure that we also close a loop that was gently opened earlier about the courses stuff, because I knew at some point I wanted to check in with you, because you going into the course space has been really interesting with the mock trial course, and of course what your son has done there. So I don't want to do too much priming of it. I'd love for you to just tell folks who are listening what you started doing with courses and how that has started to expand for your son.
So what drove me into that space was, like I said, I'm a big proponent of education-based marketing, and so we would give DVDs to prospects. We would do some of our depot prep through DVDs, things like that. And so what we found after the pandemic is, number one, a lot more people like to hire personal injury lawyers remotely. They don't feel the need to come into the office. So you don't have a chance to hand them things as often. And then secondly, handing somebody a DVD is like, handing them a Betamax tape or something like that. They're like, what do I do with this? And so I'm like, okay, well, what can we do to give the same sort of information? And so you have like this online course platform. The one that we use is Teachable. And so you can upload little 2-3 minute lessons that people can watch on their phone, on their computer, wherever. And it's a great way to make sure that people are getting lessons. So that is the online course space, and why I went into it, because I wanted to do it for that reason. Well, the thing that we haven't talked about a lot is the reason why I'm a lawyer is because of a program called Mock Trial. I did mock trial when I was in middle school, high school, college, and that's what drew me to law school. When I got out of law school, I started coaching mock trial at the middle school and high school level. In fact, I am going to leave this morning to go to the state middle school mock trial tournament, where I have 2 teams that are competing for the next
Awesome.
2.5 days. And so I've coached mock trial for 25 years, and there are basics like how to structure an opening statement, ways to score well in a cross-examination, things like that, lessons that I have taught thousands of times over the years. And so my son, Joe, so my middle child, all 3 of my kids have done mock trial, but my son Joe is in high school. And he was talking about an experience where we went up against a team, and it was obvious that they were not coached by a trial lawyer. And we were talking. He's like, it was really unsatisfying beating them. It was.
I love
like
that. I love that.
He's like, I want to win, but I want to win in a fair fight. And
That's
so,
right.
And so we talked about, well, you could interview your coaches and make these videos and then create this course. And so he decided, okay, I'll do this, because at that time he was also starting to look ahead to colleges and what's he going to do to stand out, if he's applying to really selective schools. And so he thought this might be a project that would be something that would be a good thing to talk about during interviews. And so he created a program, and he was trying to figure out the name, and he's like, well, how about Mock Trial 101? And I said, that's great. You need a URL. And he's like, I've got the URL. It's Mock Trial 101. And I said, I'm sure that's not available. And he's like, no, I went on GoDaddy. Here, I got it right now. And so he created this online course last year. As of, I think, last month, he's had over 700 different students who've watched over 2,500 lessons over the past year and a half from 80 different schools around the state of Iowa. Well, he did it. It was successful. Ben Glass says, hey, would your son make something like that for Virginia? He did it for Ben. Then he got hired by a lawyer in Kentucky. He made the course for Kentucky. He has contracts with lawyers from Washington State, lawyers from New York. And his deal is, it's like, I will make this course. I will look at the rules of competition for your state. You're going to be able to put your branding on it. The only thing I ask is that you can't charge anything for it. In other words, you know, I want this to be a free resource for the middle school and high school students in your state.
Love
and so that is what he's been doing. And you know, we'll find out. He's in the college application process right now. You know, check back with me in March, and I'll tell you whether or not it was something that moved the needle. But it's been a great project for him. It's taught him a lot about business and you know, being an entrepreneur. And so I have to thank you, Charlie, because you started me down this path of online courses, and it's been a neat thing for Joe.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, Tim, before I ask you the very final three-parter question, if people are interested in connecting with you, learning more about you, the law firm, et cetera, where should we drive them to?
Our website is fightingforfairness.com. And my email address is tsemelroth@fightingforfairness.com. Email's still the best way to reach me. One of my goals for 2024 is to up my LinkedIn game, but at this point, that's not a great way to reach me. I'm happy to talk to people about mock trial, talk to people about truck crash cases, marketing, whatever interests you. It's always great to meet lawyers from around the country and let them know that they have a friend in Iowa.
Awesome. And then the last three-parter, what are you reading, watching, and listening to these days, Tim?
So actually, I probably put the most thought into this question because I knew I was going to get asked it. So I'm going to do the weird one last.
Okay.
So in terms of what I've been reading, I'm always I always need something mindless to listen to, particularly when I'm really stressed out about things, because mainly I listen to podcasts while I'm working out, but sometimes you just need to shut your brain off. And so I still listen to John Grisham's new novels when they come out. They're not great. I mean, but his newest one, The Exchange, came out. He uses the main character from The Firm, which I read when I was in law school. And so that's what I just read. I can't give it a great recommendation, but that's
comfort food.
Sort of mindless listening I do. And then in terms of what I've been listening to, there's a trial consultant, Sari Delamont, who does a podcast where she talks about her philosophy of trying cases, and there are certain tenets that she teaches that really fit with my personality. In this case, I used a couple of things that I picked up in her podcast that felt really good for me. So Sari Delamont's podcast is fantastic. I give that a high recommendation. And then in terms of what I'm watching, so I don't get a chance to watch much TV, but my youngest son, who has never been interested in organized athletics in his life. He likes things like Dungeons and Dragons and
Heck
anime. Yes. So he came to me about 6 months ago and said, "Dad, I want to learn how to play volleyball," which is what I played club volleyball in college, and I played sand volleyball in the summer. And I said, "Where did this come from?" There is a Japanese anime series called Haiku that is about a high school boys volleyball team, and it has like 4 or 5 seasons. And he started watching it and got interested in it, and so had me watch it with him. And so when we have free time, we'll watch an episode of it. But the cool end to the story is because of that anime series, he tried out for and made a boys under 13 volleyball team. And so I just took him to practice yesterday, and he was bombing jump serves, and so
Wow.
Yeah, it was the coolest thing. So,
What?
and he reminds me that that we still have like a whole season that we have to see, and then a movie's going to come out. And so, whenever I have free time, and he's around, we try to watch at least one episode of Haiku.
That is just phenomenal. Wow. I love that so much. That's so cool. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time, your tips, your wisdom, your insight, and your energy today. It is always a delight to talk with you.
Great to talk to you, and hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you all, and we'll see you in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.